So it's not to say that numbers aren't important. It's not to say that details of the technical details are not important, but it's timing and it's knowing your audience. And it's making sure that you also have the emotional story first before you go into all the details.
You're listening to the Unsure Entrepreneur Podcast with Roger Pierce. Whether you're scribbling business ideas on a napkin or wrestling with the should I, shouldn't I question, get ready to explore the realities, the risks, and the rewards of entrepreneurship as we share the stories, scars, and successes of small business owners.
Welcome, listeners, to the Unsure Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're talking about why communication isn't just a soft skill, but a make or break skill for anyone starting and growing a business. And there's no one better to help us break down essential communication skills and how we can develop and embrace those skills than my guest, Rick Phillips. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Rick is the founder of 3V Communications, an executive communication coach and a corporate trainer who has been helping entrepreneurs and professionals around the world master the art of impactful communication since 2007. Equipped with an MBA, a background in sociology and psychology, and certifications in everything from body language to neuro-linguistic programming, Rick's unique and holistic approach is all about aligning your 3Vs, the verbal, vocal, and visual cues, to become a more effective communicator. Beyond his coaching business, Rick is a frequent conference speaker, guest lecturer at universities, director of the York Entrepreneurship Development Institute, and the executive director of the National Communication Coaching Association of Canada. He's also a frequent media expert and TEDx speaker. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Roger. Glad to be here.
You know, you and I are on the same page about this topic. I've long believed and long said that communication skills are the number one most important skill for success as an entrepreneur of any age, because it comes in so many forms. You know, whether you're pitching investors, selling to your first clients, leading a team, talking to the media, giving a speech, an entrepreneur's ability to communicate, value and vision and their strategy is essential, don't you think?
Yes, for sure. And it's interesting how it's not really taught at school because, of course, it's an essential skill for entrepreneurship, but it would be really handy for a lot of other jobs, right? For sales, for an office job of any kind, for any type of customer service, customer-facing job. So interesting that soft skills isn't really taught frequently at your average school.
They are missing the boat. A lot of institutions are coming around and doing more entrepreneurship and communications training. Can you give me an example of, those are the blatant examples, speaking and writing. When I talk about communication skills, what comes to your mind?
Confidence, I think, is the first thing that comes to my mind. And it wouldn't have been the same answer maybe 10 years ago or whatever. But I think the more I'm in this world of communication skills, I think confidence is the key element that we are trying to produce, convey, to grow within ourselves, and to have someone believe in our messaging.
You talk about confidence, which is another secret sauce for entrepreneurs. And communication gives that to us. I know we're going to expand on that more, but really, the more you do it, the more confident you are in yourself, in your business, and your people. It's kind of like a self-perpetuating benefit, isn't it?
Yes, I like to think of it like confidence and competency is kind of this cycle effect where the more competent you're at something, you get more confident, and the more confident you are at something, you take more chances and you get more competent, and then you grow past your comfort zone, which is pretty important. So I always link those two words, confidence and competency.
The winner's success formula. I love it. I love it. Okay, we'll get back to more specifics, and we're going to talk about different aspects of communication. But I want to talk about your inception, because we like to talk about, your own journey here. What inspired you to start 3V Communication, and how did it all begin?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd never imagined I was going to be an entrepreneur. I remember when I was at university, I was studying sociology, psychology, as you mentioned, and my girlfriend at the time was studying business. And I sort of jokingly looked down upon her, thinking, wow, big business are bad. They're killing trees. They're just corporate greed, this and that. And it was sort of interesting how many years later I would end up not only running a small business, but also being involved with a large Canadian charity that trains entrepreneurs, YEDI, that you previously mentioned. So when it comes to 3V Communications, what happened was I was at a certain time in my life where I just didn't know what to do career-wise. That is the simplest way to explain it. I think a lot of people out there can relate. When you get to a certain point, you're just not sure. Should you go backwards and do something you had previously done? Or should you try to take a big leap forward or go lateral? And so for myself, it was, did I want to go into the customer service world again? Did I want to go overseas and teach English again? Did I want to do some sort of social services of some kind? Did I want to try something completely different? And that was my pain at that moment, is I was ready for a change, didn't know what to do. And I stumbled upon entrepreneurship in some ways because a friend of mine was helping me try to figure out what to do. And he had just kind of mentioned, almost as a side comment, that he had a friend who was a life coach charging $100 for phone coaching. This is back in 2006, probably. And I was stunned. I'm like, what? Someone could charge $100 an hour by talking to somebody over the phone? Bonus. And then, so I researched life coaching. At that time, it was a big thing just coming to the market. And I realized after doing some research that I didn't see myself as a life coach. A life coach, perhaps could handle a variety of topics to help someone, their relationship, finances, this and that. But one category stuck out for me, which was communication skills. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, aha, it was like the apple falling on the head, right? I thought, oh, communication skills. And then it just kind of quickly added up like a secret formula in my head. I'm like, okay, native English speaker, great English and drama student, ESL teacher, right? It was just like body language, sociology, psychology. This was before my MBA as well. And so I just thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to transfer my skills of working with the English second language students, transfer them to immigrants that are working here in Toronto already, not just coming, but already established, but having a hard time getting promoted, having a hard time getting noticed, having a hard time communicating their message properly, be it English or cultural or something else. And so that was my initial target market, was to work with the immigrants who were, let's say, working at a bank, or they were engineers. They were already established, like I said, middle management, but needed some help getting through some sort of glass ceiling that was there for them. And that's what I did. So communicationcoach.ca was registered in January 2006 because nobody had it, because it wasn't a word then. I was literally the first person to put those two words together, communication coach. And then 3V Communications came up shortly after, based on the concept of, I was doing some research on communication, as you might imagine, further research. And I come across Dr. Albert Morabian. And to make a long story short, some of his work was published, and it created, at that time, something called the 7-38-55 rule, which was the idea that has kind of been debunked, but the idea that 7% of your communication was your words, and 38% was your tone, and 55% was your body language. It wasn't exactly what that scientist meant, so I'll spare the long story about it, but it was enough for me to gather the concept of 3 Vs, which I coined: verbal, vocal, visual. I thought it doesn't really matter the percentages, right? It doesn't really matter. The idea is that we have verbal and nonverbal communication, and there's verbal, and there's vocal, and there's visual. And then we can look at them separately. We can combine them. We can align them to maximize our chance of communicating effectively. And that kind of holistic approach is how I tackle the communication coaching industry.
So was one of my questions. How does this method of yours work? The 3 Vs of communication: verbal, vocal, and visual. Maybe you can elaborate a bit about how you go about helping people in those 3 areas, and what they get away from your training, what they take away.
Yeah. So you take an entrepreneur or whoever, they may have to do some sort of presentation or pitch, which is quite common. And if they were to ask me, I've got this pitch coming up, I want to win some money, et cetera. What can I do? How do I make my pitch better? I would like to look at it in terms of reverse engineering. I'd like to say, well, what's your outcome? How do you want your audience to feel? Not just the data that you want to convey, but what do you want them to feel? So let's say that they say something like, well, I want them to see my confidence, or I want them to trust me. Then I would say, okay, let's reverse engineer. So what does, verbally speaking, which is your words and grammar, what does confidence sound like, and what does it not sound like? And what does trustworthiness sound like and not sound like? So what words would we choose? What sentences would best convey trustworthiness or confidence? And then which ones can we avoid? So we kind of make a list of that. And then vocally, same thing. So vocally is your voice, right? So it's your rhythm, speed, volume, intonation, stuff like that. And so I'd say same thing. If we think of a confident speaker, what's their voice like? Or if we look at someone we really want to trust and follow, what are the items that we're noticing in their voice? Rhythm, speed, volume, intonation. And then same thing. Let's just take speed, for example, right? If someone speaks really fast, it's good for energy, but it could be like they're pulling a fast one over us. And if someone speaks really slow, we can understand them, but it's like, are they making it up as they go along? I'm not sure. It's internal dialogue that the audience might have. So maybe thinking about that medium volume, medium speed as a general outline to practice with. And then we can add some fun stuff to it. And then visual body language, right? So same thing. So what are some nervous gestures we obviously want to avoid? Facial gestures, hand gestures, what's going to present confidence and self and trustworthiness and what's not. So by using that, we can then synchronize these 3 Vs. Then when the person's practicing, they've got some tools to play with besides the content, which is another thing. Of course, we can help them with content and slides and all that other stuff as well. It's all part of communication. But essentially, that's how we use this philosophy of 3V communications. Like, well, how do I look at them individually, then to synchronize them and align them to create a 4th V, which I would call the vibe, the overall je ne sais quoi.
The vibe. Oh, I love it. There you go. You have to rename the company now, 4 Vs.
No way. It's too long.
I love how you take the time to assess first, like, am I a fast talker? Am I a slow talker? Do I make it up? So you're not just throwing instructions at someone, you're really tailoring the training to them.
It's based on their outcomes and their goals. So it's I don't necessarily tell everybody what to do based on, hey, I'm the expert, you got to listen to me. It's not exactly that. It's more like, what are your outcomes? What are your goals? What's your branding? That might be a part of it, right? So we work with what we have and then what the outcomes are. At least there's tools available, right? There's no magic bullet. Just like body language, right? People talk about, oh, I'm going to become a body language expert so I can beat my buddies at poker. No, you're not. No, you're not. Sorry. I don't care how much money you spend on the body language training, that ain't going to happen. So same thing. There's tools available that give us some structure to the content, some structure to the body language or the words or the voice. And that's really useful. And it's a life skill too.
It is a life skill. It goes way beyond entrepreneurship. But I'm fascinated by, I love public speaking. I love getting up on a stage. I've been a member of Toastmasters and certainly done my share of talks. But the body language part, maybe we can just touch upon that a little bit deeper. It's not just about the content. So many people fuss over the words. They fuss over using the right grammar. But delivery is such an important element, isn't it?
It is. It's really a sad idea if anybody spent a lot of time creating a beautiful script, whether it's for a sales pitch or a speech. And if nobody listened to their speech because it was presented in a boring way with a boring voice or boring body language. And I say that not to be cruel, but just to be realistic. You can have a wonderful script written down. It doesn't mean the person's going to pay attention. So it just shows us that the nonverbal communication outweighs or trumps the verbal communication every single time. Not sometimes, not 80%, every single time. Humans are hardwired to trust the nonverbal message they receive from their opponent or their audience or their friend, whoever is in front of them. They will take that over what the person has said every time.
Wow. So give me a tip on how I can improve my trustability in body language.
So with body language, it's about creating comfort and trust. So trust comes from comfort. And again, remember earlier I said, maybe I thought that confidence and competency were connected. I think that trust and comfort are connected as well. The more comfortable I can be, and then you can be, / we can be, the more trust is going to be able to grow between us. And so if we look at that, I could say, what kind of body language or voice or words, but let's just look at body language. What kind of body language can I do or not to create trust, to create comfort? First of all, I got to look at myself, right? What am I doing to maintain my comfort level? What am I doing, even if I'm a bit nervous, because maybe it's a very important meeting? That's fine. That's human. I care. It's okay to be nervous. But what am I doing to mask some of that? What am I doing to manage some of that so that the person doesn't think that I'm really, really nervous or jittery or perhaps being dishonest when I'm not being dishonest? So the nonverbal message, it can be simple things that everybody knows, like body language 101, don't cross your arms. Yeah, there's a reason why that's body language 101. And, oh, well, I'm chilly. I just want to, no, I don't care if you're chilly. At least not for the first impression with a new person in an important meeting. Like, you can do that with your friends and colleagues later on, but you got to make sure you're managing your first impression properly. So yeah, I would think that things like fidgeting and where your hands are, if you're sort of tapping your foot or shuffling your feet, all these things, which are fairly obvious signs of nervousness, is also signs of discomfort. And that's what we don't want to present. We want to create an audience in a vibe of, it's okay. This is a safe place. I'm comfortable. You can be comfortable. I trust you. You can trust me. There's no hidden agenda. There's no weapons hidden under the boardroom table. That's that kind of feeling you want to try to create, that ambiance almost. And if you can do that, you're going to have a much better chance of them registering your message, your verbal message.
Great tips. And I'm sure you'll agree, know your materials. You're not reading off your paper or your notes. That's a big faux pas, right? One of the things I like to recommend is go online and watch videos of TEDx, TED Talks. Toastmasters has an international speaking competition every year, and the winner of that global competition is top shelf, does all the things you're talking about. Go and watch some of these people on YouTube, right?
Exactly. And one thing I always tell the entrepreneurs that I come across as students is there's something called a 3MT, a global competition called 3MT, which is 3-minute thesis. And it's for students who are doing their master's or PhD. They can enter locally at their local university and then carry on forward to global competition. And the idea is that they've got 3 minutes, hence 3MT, 3 minutes, one static slide, to communicate in simple layman's terms what is their thesis. So it doesn't matter if they're trying to cure cancer or if they're watching migratory bird patterns or, it doesn't matter. But if you talk to your peers, they get you because they speak the same language of that academia. But what about speaking to your neighbor or your grandma? If you can communicate to your grandma what it is you're trying to do, that's a different messaging. So the 3MT competition, which I encourage people to go to YouTube and just look up 3MT winner or 3MT finalist or 3MT 2025, whatever, you'll see people from all over the world, all different backgrounds, all different educational backgrounds, communicating their thesis in a very short, powerful way. And I think that's good lessons for entrepreneurs as well, because they have to pitch the same idea.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to ask you, what are some of the common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making? I got a fun stat here before you answer. 68% of consumers have walked away from a business relationship due to poor communication. Buyer can say, forget this, I'm not dealing with this entrepreneur, this seller, because of some of their communication faults. What can we do about this?
The first mistake, especially when I think of sales and customer service oriented conversations, the first mistake I say is when the voice doesn't match the body, when the words don't match or verbal doesn't match the nonverbal. So we actually talked about this a bit earlier. When the person's saying something like, well, I'm sorry, sir, I'd like to help you, but I can't, and you don't believe them because their nonverbal messaging, whether it's their voice or whether it's face-to-face, is telling you that you don't believe that's sincere. So this is a prime example of what I said earlier, when the nonverbal communication trumps the verbal communication every single time. But however, if a customer service person or salesperson says to you in a genuine way, at least you feel it's genuine, I'm sorry, sir, I really can't help you. I really can't go lower than this price. And if you believe them, then you're still in the conversation, you're still in the relationship, you're still in the game. I think that's the first thing, is when people think that a script or magic words are somehow going to cover when they're not being genuine or when they don't know what they're talking about. That's the first mistake. When it comes to entrepreneurs specifically, their challenge is they sometimes focus on the wrong part of their business with the audience that they're talking to. They're talking to someone who's a generalist, maybe an angel investor who's a generalist, but they're suddenly go really, really deep in all the technical stuff, really, really deep, and they kind of bore the person. Or they're going heavy into the finances with somebody who's not interested. Maybe somebody asked them a different question, right? How is your business going to help society? And they start going on about all the numbers. So it's not to say that numbers aren't important. It's not to say that details of the technical details are not important, but it's timing, and it's knowing your audience, and it's making sure that you also have the emotional story first before you go into all the details.
Great consideration. And if you've got a team, if you're starting up a business and you've got, the tech team or the engineers, they shouldn't be the only ones talking. It should be, maybe the one who's got that communication skill mastery, maybe the founder, maybe another manager should be there with the technical people to help explain what they talk about, right? Because it's all about conveyance and approaching this with a team attitude.
Yeah. And if somebody doesn't have a team, maybe it's a new business, then maybe bring advisors in, right? So advisors, it could be their accountant, it could be their uncle, it could be an advisor, but bring somebody in that can help. If they really have to do it by themselves, let's say it's some kind of just a one-on-one conversation with somebody, and that's the way it is. Have a balance between the emotional storytelling, like what's the problem in the world you're trying to solve and what's on the market now and why it's not good enough and how your solution is going to help the future generations, but also have then some technical information, some numbers for credibility. So if you can at least think about that balance, whether you've got 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes with slides, without slides, even if you just come up with that balance, your pitching or conversations will be so much better.
So speaking of pitches, I was at one of your events earlier this summer and saw some of the entrepreneurs you work with do their business pitches. Wow, fantastic. On time, clear communication, good use of slides, good conveyance, emotional storytelling, as you said. Some of them dipped into the technical, but not too much. I could tell you were there coaching them in the background.
Thank you.
So, with all the pitches you've been through and help people to deliver, what makes a pitch stand out in your mind to an investor or a potential client?
That's a great question. As you know, with shows like Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, you can have someone do a great pitch and, two people love it and two people hate it, right? So I think it comes down to if the pitch / the business / the team speaks to you or not. I think that's what it's about. So you and I even could listen to somebody pitching a business and you might love it and I might just not be interested in it. There may be nothing wrong with that. Just like, nah, I'm not really interested in that industry. I don't really relate to that industry. But you might be saying, no, this is a really great idea because your life perspective or your business expertise is different from mine. So that is the trick with pitching. And I think it is important to mention that an entrepreneur is not going to wow everybody every single time with their pitch. There are going to be times when it's a perfect match. There's going to be times when it doesn't match the audience or part of the audience. And so that is part of the process of finding the right investors and the right partners. And that's good because you want the right partners, the right investors. You don't want people who don't understand your business or don't believe in your business. You want people who totally get it, who are like, yes, this is a good idea. I really want to help bring this to life. Those are the people you want anyway.
You mentioned a couple of my favorite shows, Shark Tank and Dragon's Den. What do you see when you watch those shows? What do you notice maybe that other people aren't noticing in terms of communication?
It's a little bit different now because now I'm sure just like you, now I've met some people that have been on it and they've told me some of the stories afterwards. I'm like, oh, okay. I get the bigger picture now. I mean, those shows are great because they encourage other people to be entrepreneurs. They encourage other people to take a shot. Yeah, they make fun of some people sometimes, which I'm not a really big fan of, but I love it when they have people that have got great stories, whether it's their personal story, their family story, or their product story, trials and tribulations, and now they're there getting a deal. The fact is, the audience, we don't know for sure if that deal's going to stick through or not, or if people are going to back out after due diligence. But I love those shows when they create that inspiration. And I think both shows do a great job of that. And you would not have that without the storytelling. Once again, the numbers and technical stuff, that's great. Here's our target market. If we just have 1% of the Chinese market, we're going to be billionaires. Yeah, sure. Okay, everybody will. Who cares? It's not realistic, right? But tell me the story. Tell me the story why you believe this product or service is right, the timing is right, and why it's going to be accepted by the North Americans or the Europeans or whichever audience you're targeting. That's interesting. Is when people mention proper storytelling. And the last note on that would be, don't make it a nice to have, make it a have to have, right? And so some people, I would find with apps, this is quite common. Like, well, we're building an app and it does this, this, this. And the question might be, do I need it, right? Do I need it? And it's a nice to have, but it's not a have to have. And that business is going to struggle. But when you can find the messaging and the storytelling and the pitching to make your product or service or app, whatever it might be, to be a necessary thing that you have to have in order to save yourself a lot of headaches in the near future, now we've got an interesting pitch.
Let's double down on that. You mentioned story. I mean, I'm guilty of this. I tend to describe things and then I realize, wait a minute, I should just tell a story. How important is that in the pitch, the case study, the example? Not making it up, but can you relate if I have a good customer use story, that's something I should bring up in my pitch, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Case study, customer use story, target market, ideal persona. Your own story is the best when people can relate to you. This is what I call a founder story or an aha story. Again, we go back to the apple falling on Isaac Newton's head. It's like, what made you get into the business? And if a person stumbles with that question, like, I don't know, I just wanted to make more money than I was making at my job. You know what? You're allowed to make money as an entrepreneur. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make some money, but that can't be the reason why you set up the business and why you want your business to succeed and grow past your lifetime. So that's a question that needs to be answered is what's the reason? What's the why? And then if you can answer that, that's really going to help with your storytelling. But I think that the founder has to present him or herself as a person who's passionate for the right reasons, and what's the reason that they're going to sacrifice themselves and do all this entrepreneurial long hours. I want to believe in that cause of the person.
Profit is not a dirty word, but it's important to marry it with a good story, a good reason why you're doing this thing, why you've invented this app, why you've invented this product, the solutions it's going to provide, and how it's going to make people's lives better. Really important advice. So what if I don't think I'm a good communicator? What if I'm an entrepreneur or getting into entrepreneurship and I'm hesitant because, I don't have those skills, Rick? Maybe I'm more of a technical person. Maybe I'm more of a people HR person. What if I don't have those skills? What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, 3vcommunications.ca. There's people around us. There's people around us that are accidental mentors, role models. I would ask that person, look around their family circles, social circles, business circles. Is there somebody that you admire, the way they speak? Maybe it's their actual way they speak, their voice. Maybe it's their body language. Maybe it's the way they convey complex ideas into simple, easy to understand ways. But then dig deeper. What's their secret? What's their style? Maybe ask them, maybe imitate them. I think that's one thing we can do. We can still, of course, research more communication skills. Podcasts, YouTube channels, books, still around, quite popular these days. Lots of resources available. Toastmasters, you mentioned earlier. There are some things for free. There are some things for cost, but there are a lot of things available. But the first thing is for somebody to acknowledge that they want or need the help. Because if they don't, it goes back to this nice to have, not have to have. So if they can get through the initial stages of entrepreneurship without improving their communications dramatically, they'll probably do it. But it's usually when they hit some sort of roadblock or they get specific feedback from the world about their communication, about their pitch, about their sales pitch, whatever it might be, then they go, uh-oh, I better work on this. And so rightfully so, that is the world giving you feedback and you should pay attention. So definitely there's a lot of options, and they should do some kind of coaching, training, self-study to make themselves more confident.
Good advice. And this is one of the joys of entrepreneurship. You can learn, constant learning.
Yeah, it's very hard to do things by yourself. And then why do you have to do it even if you could do it? Even if you're really, really clever and talented and you could do all these business functions, that's great. But what if you had some help? What if you had someone helping you with this aspect or that or this pitch or giving you some feedback? That's just amazing. So definitely find those mentors, find those role models. Maybe they become official board of advisors or board of directors, maybe not. But I think there are people around you, if you think about it, that you can get some initial advice from, help from. And I think that's a really good step in the right direction to start building a team.
One of the other entrepreneurs I interviewed a while back, Chala Dinkoy, she said something about coaching that you'll like. She says, the best investment I ever make is when I invest in coaching. And I don't care what it costs, she said, because I know it's going to pay off threefold or tenfold in the new skills that I develop. And I thought that was such an amazing attitude to have. I'm not trying to give a plug for coaching. I know that's what you do, but it's this, don't be afraid to invest in yourself, right?
You invest in yourself because you want to produce something for the world, right? Again, going back to entrepreneurship. So you can think of it that way. If somebody's feeling guilty about investing in themselves or the money or the time, you can think of it that way. I'm making myself better because I'm the visionary of this product or service. I'm trying to create something for the world. And so there's my reasoning.
So putting on your entrepreneurial hat, Rick, you've been at this game for a long time, being your own boss. Think back to when you first started out. What advice would you give to someone who's way back there thinking about getting into their own small business?
I think you need to assess yourself as an entrepreneur and find out what are your strengths and weaknesses. There's literally like entrepreneurial self-assessment tools online, or there's courses. Back in the day, I took the BizLaunch course with yourself. Today, we have YEDI and other incubators and accelerators and university and college programs out there. I think that's what I would recommend is if someone's got a great idea, I would say before you spend a lot of time and money and energy yet, find out, is this for you? Is the lifestyle correct? Is this the timing is correct? Is maybe doing some initial market research? You can go to Fiverr, things like that, and spend $20 to $60 and get fantastic market research to decide if this is a good timing or good market for your product or idea. So that's what I would say. And again, going back to talking to mentors too, that's what I would do. Find out if you're on the right path before you jump in with both feet.
Perfect. And on my own website, unsureentrepreneur.com, there are some self-assessment tools, links to self-assessment tools like BDC and others that I think, it's part of the journey. You got to check these things out, and they're fun. They're not definitive tools. I don't want people to say, oh, I didn't rate well in the tool, I shouldn't be an entrepreneur, but they certainly help self-assess, right? Make you understand yourself better, which is great advice.
I think self-assessment is a coaching tool. Just going back to coaching, I think that coaches of however they learn their coaching techniques from, I think that self-assessment's a big one, not just yourself, but when you're working with a client, you're not trying to feed them all the answers. You're actually trying to get them to self-assess. And so I think for entrepreneurs, it's the same thing. It's like, you can get help, you can get education, you can get advice, but self-assess all the time too. Like, where are you at? Is this the right path? And do you need to pivot? All that's very important, especially if you're in a leadership role. presuming that you're the visionary and you are the main person, then you're definitely going to have self-trust. And so self-assessment is going to really be useful.
Excellent. Know yourself better than others. Identify your strengths. Delegate your weaknesses. Learn. All good advice.
Sounds good.
All good advice. Well, listen, that's all the time we have, but I want to thank you very much, Rick, for sharing your entrepreneurial journey and your communication expertise. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I know it means a lot to our listeners. But before you go, if someone wants to get in touch, how do they connect?
Well, thank you, Roger. I enjoy talking to entrepreneurs and enjoy meeting people. Anybody can email me. LinkedIn is a great place to find me, Rick Phillips, and that's Rick without the K, RIC. Because my name is Richard and nobody but my father ever called me Richard, and I would like to keep it that way. So it's Rick. You can also find me on the website, 3vcommunications.ca. I'm happy to answer any questions from your audience.
Wonderful. Perfect. And as you've heard here, listeners, communication makes or break an entrepreneur. As Rick reminded us, how you speak, listen, and present yourself can decide whether doors open or stay shut. Put these insights into practice and watch the difference it makes in your business. That's it for today. Thank you for being here. Be sure to follow the podcast and check out the website too. And I hope you return next time for more insights on the unsure entrepreneur. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Unsure Entrepreneur podcast. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss other candid conversations with small business owners. And be sure to check us out at unsureentrepreneur.com.